Today is Sunday, Parashat Balak. We read yesterday Parashat Chukat, and next Shabbat we're going to read Parashat Balak. In Parashat Chukat it says, Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the Chukat, this is the statute of the Torah. Statute meaning it's a law that doesn't have a rational or logical reason behind it. But rather than say this is the Chukat of the Paraduma, of the red heifer, the Torah says this is Zot Chukat HaTorah. In other words, the whole Torah should be looked as a subject that we follow its mitzvot because Hashem commanded us, not because we understand logically, because it makes sense to us, because if we rely just on our limited human intellect, then sometimes we can come to the right conclusions. And we know that in subjects of morality, of certain aspects of society, as time moves on, people change their opinions, and what was totally immoral just a few years ago nowadays can become something that is accepted by society as being something that is totally moral. Human limited intellect can reason things that are horrible to make them as acceptable. We saw in the Holocaust where people who were cultured, who were advanced scientifically, it was a very advanced nation in many ways that found ways to justify barbaric and cruel behavior just because it made sense to them. So we follow the words of the Torah because Hashem commanded us. The danger is if we do only what makes sense to us, we might over time stray off the path altogether. So even those things that are totally logical, like interpersonal relations and that type of thing that a person could arrive logically on his own, it's okay to have a rational behind it. But that's not the main reason why you follow the mitzvah. You follow it because it's commanded by Hashem. In the parasha of next week, Balak hires Bilam to curse the Jewish people. And instead of curses, every time that Balak wants to say a curse, actually a blessing comes out. There is one blessing that Balak says, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Israel. How good are your tents, Yaakov, your dwellings, Israel. What is Bilam speaking about? Our sages explain that what Bilam saw, he saw that the opening of every tent was not facing the opening of a different tent. So in other words, no one could see from one tent into what was happening in the tent of his neighbor. And there was an incredible amount of discreet and privacy atmosphere where you don't know what's going on in the home and you don't care to know, and you don't have a window to look into what's going on in his home. How different it is from nowadays the culture of paparazzi and all these newspapers that want to tell you everything that's going on in the private homes of whether it's famous people or politicians or even simple people. So important it is to be discreet, to have tzniut, to be modest, whether it is modesty in dress, whether it is modesty in many, many subjects. And the more we can observe these laws of modesty, of privacy, of being discreet, the more we are making our camp, the place where we live, into a holy place. Vaya machanecha kadosh. And it's something to keep in mind. And nowadays, many times, the society sort of like pulls us in a direction, whether in the way that people dress, that they're not as covered and as modest as it should be, or whether the kind of exposure that is prevalent out there in terms of what's going on in people's private lives, and much more than we need to know. A person has to overcome these temptations of curiosity, or temptations of being involved in reading or seeing things, or being intent on knowing what's going on in everybody's private life. On the opposite, the more a person can be discreet, the better it is. And about being discreet and about having things that are not so exposed, that's how a person can bring more blessings into whatever he has. Because according to our sages, en bracha metzuya ela b'davar shesamui min ha'ayin. Bracha, blessing, is found only in those things that are covered from the eye. They're not so exposed to everybody seeing them. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.